Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to yet another Weekend with Wisdom session. This is Nitin Sridhar. Let me begin with prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadrakali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shiva Datri Swaha Swadha Namostute Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hare Om. Once again, Shubhodaya and good morning and welcome everyone to today's Weekend with Wisdom. Today we have with us Sri Subramanian Chidambaran ji. We'll be speaking on a very interesting topic, religious landscape of India during Shankara Bhagavad Padacharya's time. And this will be, he will be sharing some glimpses from insights from his upcoming book, which has been published by INDICA. The book's title is Sankarayanam, The Journey of Shankara, and we will be releasing that book very soon, and he will be sharing some insights from that book for all the benefits of all the seekers seekers and devotees of Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya. Just a brief introduction to the speaker. Sri Subramanian ji hails from a family of Samaveda scholars from Pudukode village in Kerala. He is an engineer and MBA from Indian Institute of Management by qualification and is the director of strategy with a leading MNC in India by profession. He is an MA in Samskrita with specialization in Vedanta and is currently pursuing his PhD in Indic perspectives of leadership from Chinmaya Vishwavidyapit. He is also trained Carnatic musician and a faculty of Bhakti, Puranas and Vedanta, and he is also an author of many books. We are very glad you could make time for this session, Subramaniam ji. So I'm personally looking forward to this session. Please go ahead and start your presentation.
Namaste Nitin ji. Ajnanantar gahanapatidan atmavidyopodeshaihi tratum lokan bhavadavashika tapa papachyamanan muktva maunam vadavitapinoho mulato nishpatanti shambhor murtischarati bhuvane Shankaracharya rupam. Namaskaram to all, and thanks to Nitin ji and INDICA Moksha for giving me this opportunity to share with all of you some of my thoughts and insights into this topic. As Nitinji mentioned, this is like offering a glimpse into the space of the religious landscape of Bharata during the time of the Acharya Shankara. A more detailed work on this would be presented in my book, in my upcoming book, as Nitinji mentioned, which is called Sankarayanam, The Journey of Shankara. Should be releasing next week. I will be sharing details of that as well towards the end of this talk. So this can be considered as a precursor to generate a good amount of interest and curiosity on this topic amongst all of you listeners. Now coming to the religious landscape during the time of Shankara. In that sentence itself, you would find that the very first point that would really strike you is the time of Shankara. That itself is such a controversial topic today, such a debated topic today, with dates ranging from 5th century BC to 8th century AD. So nearly 1300 years apart is where the dates of Acharya Shankara are ranging. There is no unanimity yet on the date, but there are various arguments that have been placed for all these uh, estimations of Acharya's year. Just a point there, uh, though it's not a topic that I would be delving on in this lecture. One thing that we need to keep in mind as regards to many of these discussions on dates of various rishis and personalities and the dating of our scriptures, etc., is that we ourselves as a culture have never believed in a historical date being important, because this culture has always been there. It is called as Sanatana Dharma, which itself means the eternal Dharma, the Dharma that has always been there. So there has been no great importance attached to time, and especially a time in point or a time stamp. That has never been our case. And that is why our concept of time itself is a circular. It's Kala Chakra. It says that it keeps repeating itself. So there is no linearity. There is no concept of linearity in time that we go by. We go by the concept of circularity in time. So something that is happening now will repeat itself in many more years to come. So we do not see the necessity or the importance of one point in time when things were linear and something happened X thousand years ago. Many of these discussions have come to the forefront mainly because of uh, the Western way of thinking about history and events and incidents, and also the effort of some of the uh, individuals to really push things that are related to Sanatana Dharma to much later times, and in most cases to the Christian era. So trying to move events and individuals from the before Christian era to the after Christian era or during the Christian era. So that effort has resulted in many of us talking about the dates of the various rishis and the scriptures, because it has become a necessity now, because then people are confounded with this dilemma as to how recent or how old our scriptures are. But if you just go by our own rishis and what they have told us, our dharma is Sanatana, it is Apaurusheya, it has been there for ages, and therefore any discussions on time or dating has been irrelevant. Similarly, Acharya Shankara has also not spoken much about his time. But the various Mahatmas who have come later have opined on the times of Shankara, on the times of the Acharya. And as I said, there have been a huge range of this estimation. If you just go by the estimation of the 5th century BC, which is around 507 BC, which has been the date that has been proposed and also accepted by many of the Shankara Mathas, like the Kanchi Matha or Dwaraka, Puri Matha, etc. We are actually this year, we would be celebrating, if you take that 507 BCE as the birth of the Acharya, and then 32 years later as the Samadhi of the Acharya or the Antardana of the Acharya, probably this is the 2500th year of the Samadhi of Acharya Shankara that we would be celebrating this year, 24-25. So that's also an interesting coming together of things as we delve on this topic. Okay, now coming to this topic of the religious landscape of Bharatavarsha. Religion by itself, the concept has come much later, as many of you would be knowing. When we said Sanatana Dharma, at that time there was just one Dharma, and it was one huge umbrella under which many things existed. It is not one standard accepted procedure or accepted set of principles that we went by. Even under the broad ambit of the term Sanatana Dharma, various matas or various opinions, viewpoints, approaches have existed for eternity. but all of them still concurred to certain basic principles, to certain basic fundamentals, and that is why they were called as Sanatana Dharma or Vaidika Dharma, because they were all based on the Vedas. The major change to this entire scenario came with the advent of Gautama Buddha and Mahavira Jaina, Vardhamana Mahavira, where the Bauddha Mata and Arhata Mata or the Jaina Mata, they originated. While they are very much, I would say, if you look at the principles, if you look at the tenets, the concepts of these matas, they very much take or very much belong to many of the principles in Sanatana Dharma. However, in later times after the Buddha and after Vardhamana Mahavira, the followers of that mata felt the necessity to form a separate mata away from Sanatana Dharma. And that is, I would say, the first offshoot that came as the concept of what we call today as religion. That is where it began. The impact that it had, or the adverse impact that it had on Vaidika Dharma, was people forsaking the Vaidika Dharma for adoption into these matas. And one of the main critiques in these matas towards Vaidika Dharma was around the rituals, the rites and rituals that were being performed. So it was mainly related with karma or action. So that related to Dharma Glani, that led to Dharma Glani, the Sanatana Dharma Glani, and that is where the advent of Acharya Shankara comes. So when Acharya actually incarnated in Bharatavarsha, when his Avirbhava happened in Bharatavarsha, at that point of time you did have a huge following and propagation happening of the Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata. There were also the Shaivite saints like Tirukஞான Sambandar Appar, we have heard about them. They also have countered Jaina Mata in their, especially in the south of the country, southern part of the country. So when Acharya came, that seemed to have been the major precursor. That was the situation, or that was the space into which Acharya landed, where the Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata was fast spreading. But to a decent level, they were also contained, because between this propagation of Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata and the advent of the Acharya, or the coming of the Acharya, there were a few people who came into the picture, especially the Mimamsakas. You have great Mahatmas like Kumarila Bhatta, Mandara Mishra, Prabhakara, who belonged to the Mimamsaka school, the Purva Mimamsa school, who had already come into the picture, and they were already working towards reviving of the Vaidika Dharma, especially the Karma Kanda, because the first thing that got affected in this whole aspect of adoption of Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata is giving up of Vedic rituals. So let me explain a bit here, right? The construct of Sanatana Dharma. In Sanatana Dharma, as Acharya says in his Upodghata of Bhagavad Gita itself, Dvivyudo hi vedokto dharmaha pravritti lakshano nivritti lakshanascha jagataha sthiti karanam. Dvividho hi vedokto dharmaha pravritti lakshano nivritti lakshanascha. Vedic Dharma or Vaidika Dharma has two aspects. It has got Pravritti Dharma and Nivritti Dharma. Pravritti Dharma relates to that of the world, the worldly aspects, which relates with karma, action, the mundane activities, the purusharthas of dharma, artha and kama. All these are related with Pravritti Dharma. Nivritti Dharma is when you are tired of the samsara and you want to now get into a realm, get into a space which is eternal in nature, which offers eternal bliss, which is liberated from this constant transmigration cycles. And that is where you get into the space of Nivritti Dharma, Nivritti, to just give up, right? And get into that space, which is where the Purushartha of Moksha comes into the picture, or liberation comes into the picture, which is where Vedanta is the space where we deal with Nivritti Dharma. But both of these are essential pillars of Sanatana Dharma, or our what we call as Hinduism today. These two are primary pillars or primary foundations of that Sanatana Dharma. When you come to Pravritti Marga, keeping the large population in mind, or keeping the large amount of humanity in mind, Vedic Dharma or the Pravritti Marga emphasizes upon the tenets and aspects of what will a common or normal human being be able to do, and how do I elevate the human being from where he is or she is to the point where they really want to attain moksha, or the highest or the supreme truth. That is the objective of Veda or Vaidika Dharma, to elevate the person and take them step by step and not just jump the ladder which they know is not possible. So that is why they lay this path of Karma Marga, Bhakti Marga, Yoga Marga, all these margas finally leading to liberation. Finally, that is, you're going into Nivritti, the state of Nivritti later on. But the Jiva remains in the state of Pravritti Marga for a very, very long period of time, for many, many births. And that is where most of us are in. So we need something to hold on to. We need a dinacharya. We need a daily routine. We need a routine of doing puja. We need a routine of going to the temple. We need a routine of feeding the poor. We need a routine of doing charity. We need a routine of learning things. We need a routine of imbibing things. We need a routine of earning wealth, remaining happy, comfortable. All these are aspects, and that these all aspects are considered within Pravritti Marga. Now, what happened with the coming of Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata? Now, here we need to make a distinction, and let me make that very clear. We are not talking about the Buddha and the Vardhamana Mahavira. In Sanatana Dharma, in many aspects of Sanatana Dharma, we still revere them as jnanis. They are realized souls. They have attained the supreme truth. There is no doubt about that. So we are not talking about the Gautama Buddha or Vardhamana Mahavira. We are talking about the Mata, or the following that happened later on, which got institutionalized, right? That Mata, if you see, focused a lot on Sannyasa Dharma, and that too not Sannyasa Dharma in its truest sense. Because even Sannyasa Dharma, there are various tenets to Sannyasa Dharma, which I have actually spoken of in detail in another lecture of for INDICA Academy, which is on the Sannyasa tradition, which many of you can find it on YouTube. So I will not delve on it deeper here, but there are principles for sannyasa also, which need to be followed in the right way for you to be even eligible for sannyasa dharma. But what happened in this Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata adoption is that people were given an easy ticket, easy entry into sannyasa ashrama without necessarily really looking at their eligibilities and qualifications. This I am talking about the later degradation that happened in the Mata over a period of time. It came to a point where the dharma, these two dharmas which were known for ahimsa, which had ahimsa as one of their basic tenets, had come down to huge amount of violence if people did not accept their dharma. And that is the aspect that we find in the story of Kumarila Bhatta, who had taken up, who had put on the form of a Buddhist bhikkhu and gone to learn the Buddhist scriptures. But the moment they came to know that he is actually a Vaidika, but he has come to learn the Buddhist, scriptures, they were not hesitant to even push him away from the mountain cliff and kill him. So that was the level to which the dharma had come. And in the Tevarams of Upper Tirunavakarasar, you find in the songs itself, Upper is saying that these Jainas are so bad, it has degraded to such a level that they are ready to kill people, and he himself was tied to a huge rock and thrown into the ocean so that it will just go down and he will be killed or he will die. That is the time he later on he sings this padigam where he says that even though that huge rock was tied to me and pulled down, it is Namah Shivaya, it is Lord Parameshwara who pulled me up and still made me alive. So they have struggled a lot and they have propagated a lot against these matas because of the degradation that happened in these matas. So this is the scenario, or this is the glani that happened in Vaidika Dharma, when people just took an easy route into the sannyasa or the bhikkhu and living still all the luxuries of life, right? Still living all the luxuries, eating merrily, eating whatever they wanted, operating like an empire or a fiefdom without actually adhering to the tenets of sannyasa dharma. That was the issue that really led to grihasthas giving up their grihastha ashrama and moving into sannyasa dharma and moving into becoming bhikkhus, which is of this category. So that was the issue where the Vaidika Dharma was reducing, because Vaidika Dharma is built on Pravritti Marga. Nivritti Marga happens only for a few people who are really the cream, who have really evolved and matured. But for the larger population, it is Pravritti Marga that needs to hold. That is the place where the Mimamsakas, the Karmakandins like Prabhakara, Kumarila Bhatta, Mandana Mishra, all of them came into the picture to revive this Karmakanda Bhaga. So, even as Acharya Shankara took birth, the activities were already happening for the revival of Vaidika Dharma or Sanatana Dharma. So Acharya then came up with the aspect of, okay, Vaidika Dharma is great, the Pravritti Marga is great, but the Nivritti Marga also needs to be understood in the right way, because the major issue that had happened in people adopting the Buddhist or the Buddha Mata or Jaina Mata is a wrong notion or wrong understanding of Sannyasa Dharma. So while Pravritti Marga was being rebrought into the society and rekindled, it was important to also refine, resurrect, streamline, bring to forth the real Sannyasa Dharma and what does real Nivritti Marga mean. And that is the objective or the job that Acharya took, to say that that needs to be brought back again, and that is where the message of the Upanishads and Vedanta comes into the picture. Acharya took birth in Kerala Desha, where Vaidika Dharma was at its peak. So you find that if you look at that kind of a time period, or the time period just before Acharya's advent, is where you find Kerala being a place that had revived the Vaidika Dharma. You have great personalities like the Melathol Agnihotri, who was the son of the great Vararuchi, who had performed 99 sacrifices or 99 Vedic yajnas in Kerala for the revival of Vaidika Dharma. Even today, the Nambudiri community is one of the few communities in Bharatavarsha who are still practicing the Vedic yajnas. The Vedic yajnas have more or less gotten, they have been wiped off, I must say, from the social scene, or they have gone into oblivion from the social scene today. Because most of us are not performing Vedic yajnas. The kind of rites and rituals we are performing is some moderated version or toned down or watered down version of many of these rites and rituals that were there in the Vedic times. But those Vedic yajnas like Atiratra, Soma Yajna, all of these great yajnas today are still, you can see, being performed by only a few communities in Bharatavarsha. Nambudiri community is one of them, which are still holding on to those aspects of Vedic Dharma. So it is in this community that Acharya takes birth, because the Pravritti Marga is very important for Acharya to propagate the Nivritti Marga. So Kerala was reverberating and full of Vaidika Dharma. You had the Nambudiri communities who were actively front leading the Pravritti Marga there. And that is where Acharya takes birth. Now, when you come to the religious landscape, in the later aspects of the Shankara Vijayas, you find this aspect of the Acharya encountering 72 faiths or 72 matas in Bharatavarsha. And the details of these matas I have given this in my book, which was a very interesting exercise for me also, to really delve deeper into these 72 matas. We don't have detailed information on all these matas. We have information on many of these matas, but some of these matas are just known by their name. And we don't have further details on what differentiates or what were the tenets of these matas that were different from the others. But just to give you some examples of what these matas were like. Of course, you have the Shaiva Mata, But within Shaiva Mata itself, what we call as Shaiva or Shaivism today is actually an assimilation of many, many matas over the years. During the time of the Acharya, you find examples, you find names such as there were a group of people called Shaivas, there were a group of people called Raudras, there were a group of people called Ugras, Bhaktas, Jangamas, Pashupatas, Maheshwaras, Kapalikas, Chandabhairavas, Veerashaivas. These are all various aspects within the Shaiva Mata itself. So within what you call as Shaivism today, there were so many such bifurcations of that and so many such categories within that. And each of them differed in their concept of how they would like to venerate Shiva, how they would like to venerate or worship Shiva, and what was the concept of Shiva. For example, the Shaiva Mata or Shaivas were people who bore the symbol of lingas on their foreheads. They had linga, the symbol of linga. Raudras had the symbol of Trishula. Ugras had the symbol of Damaruka on their hands. For Shaivas also they had lingas on their hands, and Raudras had the Trishulas on their foreheads. Bhaktas were the ones who wore linga on their foreheads. Pashupatas, they had symbol of linga on their forehead, hands, heart and navel. And Pashupata Mata was one that was propagated by Lakulisha. That was an entirely different set of mata that was existing. And in that mata, you also find this aspect of one great scholar called Nilakantha, who was a great master of Shaivism and who had commented on the Brahma Sutras in the light of the Pashupata Mata. So these matas were not just like, I believe this or I like this. It was not just at that level. There were scholars, there was a detail, there was a in-depth mata, there was an in-depth following and belief system, where you find to an extent that the Pashupata Mata, you have a scholar called Nilakantha, his work called Shiva Tatparya Sutra Bhashya. The Shiva Tatparya Sutra Bhashya is the interpretation of the Vedanta Brahma Sutras in the light of the Pashupata Mata. So you can see to the extent to which you had people and following and belief systems in these matas. And of course, you also have the Chanda Bhairava Mata, which again had linga symbols etched on their foreheads. They were smeared with ashes all around the body. They were wearing garlands of Rudraksha on their head, neck and hands, etc. Maheshwara Mata. Maheshwara Mata is spoken about in the Bhamati, in the commentary Bhamati by Vachaspati Mishra. He speaks about the Maheshwara Matas and he speaks about them having four subsects called Shaivas, Pashupatas, the Karunika Siddhantins and the Kapalikas. Kapalika seems to be a faith that has been existing for a very long period of time, and Acharya's life history, even itself, if you look at, you find those episodes where you have Dugra Bhairava and all, where these were Kapalikas who believed in the Kapali, right? The Kapala, and all their rituals were with the Kapala or the skull, and they were highly aggressive people, and that's what you find in the history of Acharya, the life history of Acharya also, that they were even ready to behead the Acharya and offer that as Bali to Bhairava, because they were worshipping Bhairava. They are the worshippers of Bhairava. So that Kapalika Mata had also created a large amount of stress in the society. Actually in the history of Acharya, you find in many episodes where even the king was afraid of the Kapalikas and the head of the Kapalikas, because they could do anything. They could do any sorts of sorcery, black magic. Any of these mantravadas could be done by them on anybody. And they had become a very powerful sect. They had huge amount of followers who were worshipping them. They had taken over many parts of the city, the Rajya, the kingdom. Many of them were subject to their rules, and they had taken them up. They had usurped many of these things, and people were living in fear in many of the cases when these kind of social elements had come into the picture. So you find that these matas also had a social repercussion. So though there were some religious beliefs or some kind of belief system, it just did not remain with the intellectual belief system. It also started seeping into the society, where they were wanting people to get into this cult or sect, and people who did not agree or who did not come into that, there were actions taken against them, atrocities committed against them, and even the governing bodies, administrators, the kings, were many of the time helpless and desperate against these. And that's what you find in the story of the Acharya, where you have the King Sudhanva. You have that figure, that personality of King Sudhanva, whom you find mentioned all through the life of the Acharya, especially during his Digvijaya, where he himself had this issue, and that's why he took the help of the Acharya to really counter these Bhairava heads or the Kapalika heads, the chiefs and all, and to bring them back into the main society or into Vaidika Dharma, into Sanatana Dharma. So you had all these religious beliefs even within Shaivism. Some of them were very aggressive and very harmful to the society. Some of them were more intellectual. Some of them were more belief systems. But some of them had a huge amount of impact. Similarly, Vaishnavism, right? Why today we call it as Vaishnavism, and when you think of Vaishnavism today, you would consider various aspects of Vishnu, all which have got assimilated into Vaishnavism. But the Vaishnava Mata itself had so many subsects within it. You had the Vaishnava Jnana Bhakta Mata, you had the Vaishnava Karma Bhakta Mata, the Bhagavata Mata, Pancharatra Mata, Vaikhanasa Mata, Karmahina Vaishnava Mata, Gopala Krishna Mata, Adi Varaha Mata, Shesha Mata, Garuda Mata. These are all the different matas. Like Shesha Mata, Garuda Mata and all is believed that Shesha or Adi Shesha is the one, the bed of Vishnu. He is the one who will grant us liberation, because he is extremely close to Vishnu. He is the one. You cannot get liberation directly from Vishnu. That is not possible. So you have to go to Adi Shesha and you have to worship Adi Shesha. Through that you will get liberation, because he is closest to Vishnu and he will recommend us to getting Sayujya or liberation. Similarly, Garuda Mata, where Garuda is the one who is worshipped as the primary deity, because he is again the vehicle of Mahavishnu and he will grant us liberation through that. Similarly, you had this aspect of Gopala Krishna Mata, where the aspect was on Gopala Krishna. Krishna is the primary focus there, and that is why you have this sect prevalent in Mathura, Vrindavana, Bengal, Jodhpur. In many of these areas, you have this aspect. And in later times, even the Tantric, the Vamachara aspects of Tantra also had gotten into these matas. Like in the Gopala Krishna Mata, you also have these, especially in Bengal, you had the Mata also imbibing certain Vamachara aspects of Tantra into that Mata. And they were more addressing the Krishna as the one who is having the amorous plays with the gopis. That was the concept that took predominance or prominence. While those very incidents, like the Rasa Leela, everything has been dealt with beautifully by, say, Jayadeva Kavi in Gita Govinda, Ashtapadi. The concept, the content is the same, but it is highly elevating. It is on a sattvic, highest sattvic levels that we take the Rasa Leela in the Bhagavata Purana, in Gita Govinda or Ashtapadi, Jayadeva's Ashtapadi. It elevates it to a completely different level. But when those same events or incidents are then brought down, right, and you are treating it more as a physical aspect or more as a much downgraded aspect, then it again leads to the downgrade or degradation of that mata. That is what happened in many of these aspects. Among these, of course, you have things like Pancharatra and Vaikhanasa Mata, even today, that exists within Vaishnava tradition or Vaishnavism, where there is this Pancharatra. These are based on the Agamas, the Agama texts or the Agama scriptures, where you have the Pancharatra Agama, the Vaikhanasa Agama. Again, these Pancharatra and all have also been developed over a period of time. Traditionally, the Pancharatra is said to have had Narayana as their deity. See, this concept today that Vaishnavism is there and Vishnu is there and everything is under that is the concept that we have today, because a lot of assimilation has happened over a period of time. But in the original, in those days, you had Vishnu as a separate deity, Narayana as a separate deity, Krishna as a separate deity, Rama as a separate deity, Nrsimha as a separate deity, Varaha as a separate. All these were separate deities and they had their own followings without getting mixed with anybody else. So Narayana Mata will not be worshipping Vishnu. It is not that Narayana is an aspect of Vishnu, not from that aspect. Narayana is a deity in itself. That was the Pancharatra Mata. And it believed in the Chaturvyuha form, where it said it worshipped the Chaturvyuha form, where it worshipped Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. These were the four forms that were worshipped within that, because it was expounded by sage Narayana. These four forms were worshipped. Vasudeva as Krishna, Sankarshana as Balarama, Pradyumna as a son of Krishna and Rukmini, and Aniruddha as a son of Pradyumna and Rukmavati. These were the four deities who were worshipped within the Pancharatra. Vaikhanasamatha, the Vaikhanasamatha was a completely different approach or method towards the worship of Vishnu. Even today, the various Vaishnava temples also, if you see, there are certain temples that will follow the Vaikhanasa Agama, especially the Tirumala Tirupati temple, the Triplicane Parthasarathi temple. These are temples that still follow the Vaikhanasa Agama. Srirangam temple, Varadaraja temple, all these are temples that follow the Pancharatra Agama. So even when Ramanujacharya came in later times, he encountered these different agamas, and many of the times he just left the agamas as they are, as these people are following it. But these different sects were even existing in later times, but during the time of the Acharya, they were more pronounced, or they were there. So these are all aspects that you find in the Vaishnava Mata. Now coming to Shakta Mata, the following of Shakti, you had aspect of Mahalakshmi Mata, Sharada Mata, Rajashyamala Mata, and Shakti Mata. Shakti Mata, which is more taking the aspect of Durga or Bhavani, they mention about the place called Bhavani Pura, which was one of the centers or hubs of the Shakti Mata, which can be understood as the modern day Tuljapur, which is one of the Shakti Pitas where the deity is Bhavani. Chhodaja Bhavani. That is mentioned as one of the primary hubs of the Shakti Mata. Mahalakshmi Mata is mentioned as Kuvalayapura. Kuvalayapura is mentioned as one of the hubs of Mahalakshmi Mata, which can again be understood as the modern day Kolhapur, where the Mahalakshmi Mata is there. Sharada Mata is mentioned as a Mata, but definitely the Sharada Mata, we know that some aspects of this was existing in Kashmira Desha. Kashmira Pradesha was known as Sharada Kshetra. And even the many aspects of that has come into the southern part of the country has been because of the migration or coming of these Kashmiri Brahmanas into these deshas, is where the Sharada Mata or the Sharada Devata Aradhana has also come into many of these kshetras through that. Rajashyamala Mata. See, the Mahavidyas, we talk about the Dashamahavidyas when you talk about Shaktism or Shakti Mata. Among those Dashamahavidyas, one of the greatest Mahavidya is Rajashyamala or Shyamala. So one of the forms, the goddess called Rajashyamala, also known as Matangi, that form is mentioned as one of the matas, one of the followings that was there. In fact, Raja Matangi is one of the deity in Madurai, goddess Meenakshi, is considered as a form of Raja Matangi, is considered as a form of Rajashyamala. So that is one of the forms that you also find in Madurai Meenakshi Amman. So these are all various aspects that you see in the Shakti Mata. Now these are the three matas we generally understand today. Within Hinduism also, you understand Shaivism, you understand Vaishnavism, you understand Shaktism. But you have many more deities, and all these matas were existing at that point of time. But the fact is that today they're actually in a much more moderated state than they were at that point of time. You have the Shaura Mata, that is the worship of Surya. Today you hardly find any such matas or belief systems, though we celebrate certain festivals, like say the Makara Sankranti, or some of these festivals that we celebrate for or keeping Surya as one of the primary deities within that festival. There is no following that we find that this is a family or set of people who just follow Surya as their primary deity. We don't find that concept today. Today the concept has become more homogeneous. But at that point of time, people had those specific, individual followings in Shaura Mata. And within Shaura Mata itself, there were 6 kinds of or divisions within the Shaura Mata itself. The Ganapati Mata. See, today Ganapati, we would begin, any any puja or rituals or activities, we begin with the worship of Ganapati. That is where we place Ganapati. And of course, during the Vinayaka Chaturthi, the Ganeshotsav, the Sarvajanik Ganeshotsav, we place the Ganapatis in pandals, right? We bring Ganapati, we celebrate Ganapati, and then we do their Visarjana. But in the normal days, we would just perform one puja to one of the Ganapati photos we would have in our house, or we would begin the pujas and activities with the worship to Ganapati. This is what we normally do. But Ganapati Mata means having Ganapati as a center form, and there it is mentioned about people who had Ganapati as their primary deity, and this is primarily in the region of modern day Maharashtra and Karnataka. Even today, actually, if you look at the Ashtavinayakas, and if you look at Moraya Swami, right? Moraya Gosavi, the one who was one of the primary saints who propagated the Ganapatya Matha. If you look at that, if you look at his life history, he has been a follower of Ganapati. For him, Ganapati is Pratyaksha. That means that is the Ishtadevata, that is the primary deity for him. And he has only lived for Ganapati, as Ganapati, in the worship of Ganapati all his life. And that is an aspect that you find in many of the Ashtavinayakas today. Ashtavinayaka temples, if you go in Maharashtra, which is one of the primary hubs of Ganapatya Mata, even today, that is why you find Ganapati as a Ishtadevata or primary deity in the Maharashtrian tradition a lot, and also in the Karnataka tradition also a lot. Especially in the Maharashtra traditions, when you come to the Peshwas, right, in the Maratha Empire, after the time of Shivaji, when you come to the time of Peshwas, you find that Ganapati was their primary deity. Ganapati was their Ishtadevata, right? That is coming from this aspect, because Ganapatya Mata was a primary focus or a hub for Maharashtra and Karnataka. Even within that, you had Santana Ganapati, Maha Ganapati, Haridra Ganapati, Navanita Ganapati, Swarna Ganapati, various kinds of Ganapati Matas. Even within that, there were various bifurcations. You also have the Uchishta Ganapati. Even today, you have various kritis of Muthuswami Dikshitar in Carnatic music, which speaks about Uchishta Ganapati. That is a tantric form of Ganapati, actually. So the tantric aspect in Ganapatya Mata was through Uchishta Ganapati. So these all aspects come in the worship of Ganapati. Then the Kaumara Mata or Kartikeya Mata, having Kaumara or Kumara as the primary deity. Again, today you find a lot of that Kaumara Matha, especially in the southern part of the country, especially in Tamil Nadu, Sri Lanka. If you go to these places, even today, you will find a huge following of the Kaumara Matha. Though they may not understand that as a Matha today, but for them, Kumara is the Ishtadevata, right? That kind of a cult. But that cult did not exist just in the south. It was also there in the north, in the city of Rohitaka, or what we call as modern day Rohtak. Rohitaka has been associated with the Kaumaras and Kartikeya. The Gupta period, actually, in the Gupta period, if you look at the various coins of the Gupta period, you will find images of Skanda or Kartikeya as a warrior on the peacock. Many such images you will find of Kartikeya, because Guptas were the ones who also propagated the Kaumara Mata in later times. And south, I already mentioned, you have a great following of Kumara, especially related with the language of Tamil also. There is a great correlation that you draw there. Now beyond these, so today when we call a Shanmata, and Acharya is said to have been credited with the forming of the Shanmata, he did not form Shanmata. When you say he formed a Shanmata, it doesn't mean that he only formed 6. He said that everything has to go and only 6 traditions have to be there. He didn't say that. He just culled out the prominent traditions among these, and he brought these people somewhere together to say that why are you getting bifurcated so much inside? Because you're all believing in that Ishtadevata, why don't you all come together? That is where he formed Shaiva Vaishnava Shakta, Ganapatya Kaumara Shaura. That is Ganapati, Kumara, Surya, Shiva, Shakti and Vishnu. 6 major traditions, theistic traditions within Sanatana Dharma. But beyond that also there were many matas. And all these matas have been listed in my book. Just some examples, I will give you some interesting examples. there was a mata called Kshapanaka Mata. Kshapanaka Mata, generally we associate the term with the Digambara Jainas, is how it is associated. But in many of the Shankara Vijayas, this Kshapanaka Mata has been mentioned as the people who believed, who were followers of time as the supreme deity. People who believed that time is the supreme, that Kala is the supreme. It is beyond everything. There is no deity beyond Kala. Kala is the supreme, time is supreme. We keep telling there's nothing in no time and tide wait for none. Time is of most essence, of most value. Though we know it as a principle, some people lived their life based on that time is the supreme thing, and I would believe, for me, time is the supreme deity, and I will worship time. Imagine they don't worship any other deities. There is no other Ishta Devata. They don't believe in any other theistic traditions. They just believe in the concept of time, and they worship that. That was a mata called Kshapanaka Mata. Can you imagine the kind of matas that we had in Bharatavarsha? Then of course you had matas on various other deities like Indra Mata, Yama Mata. People who believed Yama is the supreme because he is the one who is the lord of death. Dharma Devata, he is the one to be worshipped. So Dharma, so Yama Mata. Bhumi Mata, that earth is the supreme, right? The earth is giving us everything. We should protect the earth. Today there are so many dialogues around decarbonization, climate change, protecting the earth. There were people who believed earth is the supreme deity. That was the Bhumi Mata. We should worship the Bhumi as the supreme. Manmata Mata, people who believe that Kamadeva or Manmata is the supreme. Hence we should worship that. Kubera Mata. Today you find there's various things coming around Lakshmi, Kubera Puja. You think this is new. No, it is not new. It has existed for ages. There have been Kubera Mata even at the time of the Acharya. You had a Mata called Kubera Mata. You had Lakshmi Mata, which we already spoke about. Mahalakshmi Mata. So Kubera Mata, they believed it is around Kubera. So all these are not new things. They have been existing at some point of time. Maybe many of these things are now coming up again in our scenarios. And then of course you had the various traditions of yoga, Sankhya, Nyaya, Vaisheshikas. All of them were different matas that believed in that tradition, saying that that is the ultimate path to liberation. People who believed in Navagrahas. Today you find that Navagraha is there in every temple. And there are some people today also who would worship the Navagrahas more than they would worship the primary deity. They would be more afraid of Shanishwara or Rahu Ketu rather than of Parameshwara and Parvati, who is there in the Sanctum Sanctorum. So they would rather do more circumambulations to Shanishwara and Rahu Ketu rather than on the Navagraha panel, rather than even doing circumambulation to the main deity. So those matas were there at that point of time. You had the Shanishchara Mata, you had the Bhauma Mata, Buddha Mata, Brihaspati Mata, Buddha Mata, not Buddha Mata, Buddha Mata, Brihaspati Mata, and many such matas, Rahu Ketu Mata, were all there. Gandharva Mata, very interesting. Gandharva Vidya is the Vidya of music, is the Shastra of music, Gandharva Shastra or Gandharva Vidya. People who believed that that is the ultimate. No other theistic traditions. Music, Nada, doing the Upasana of Nada, the Bindu, the Swaras, the sound that is emanating, focusing on the Swaras itself is ultimate. Aren't there people today also who are even some great musicians who just believe in music as the supreme, Nada as the supreme? That Mata is called Gandharva Mata. That is what we find as reference to during the time of the Acharya. Pitra Mata, who just believe in performing Pitru karmas. That is the ultimate. My ancestors will grace me. If I do all things for them, the tarpanas and everything, that is enough for me. The ancestors will grace me for that. That kind of mata. Then of course you had the Bauddha Mata, Jaina Mata, the typical matas that we speak about. Bhuta Vetala Mata. People who worship the bhutas, the ghosts, the goblins, the Vetalas, the Pishachas. Those kind of, even today they exist. Today they are using the various sorceries and black magic and all those things. You see people who talk with paranormal, they do paranormal activities, they talk with disembodied souls and everything. That was a mata, Bhuta Vetala Mata, who believed in that. And that is the ultimate. So there is another mata called Mallari Mata. And Mallaharis even today, if they exist, the concept of Mallaharis does exist even today. The Mallari Mata was there as a mata where they worshipped. Even today they have the local deity called Khandoba. In Maharashtra you find that worship is mentioned even during the time of the Acharya. That mata was existing. Mallaris especially in the Deccan region, Maharashtra, Karnataka, you will find this region a lot. So that is the kind of mata, Mallari mata, that is mentioned even at the time of the Acharya. So you find the landscape that Acharya encountered, and this he encountered when he traveled. See, when you look at the life of the Acharya, for the first 8 years he was in Kaladi itself. So he was in that Vedic environment, that environment of the Nambudris and Kerala Pradesha. Kerala is actually a very unique place where many of these matas like Shaiva, Vaishnava and all they coexisted in great harmony. So that is why even in the house of the Acharya, you find that Krishna is their family deity. Even today you find the temple of Krishna, which is close to the temple of, or the place of birth of the Acharya in Kaladi. That was their family deity. Acharya's father is said to have, Shivaguru is said to have been a priest or been performing pujas to the Katyayani temple, Devi Katyayani. So there was a Shakti. Shaiva Mata was anyway there. Shaivism and Shiva Puja and Shiva Bhakti was already there in the family that ran, because he was born as a result of the prayers to Vadakunnathan or Vidavakundranathan, Vrishabhachala, the Shiva temple that you have in Trishur or Trishiva Perur. So you find the aspect of Shiva, you find the aspect of Vishnu, you find the aspect of Shakti, even the birth of Acharya. That's the kind of environment he grew in. But as he started traveling the rest of Bharatavarsha is when he encountered, that happened much later, after his 16 years, more or less after his 16 to 32. In that 16 to 18 years he traveled across Bharatavarsha in the form of Digvijaya is when he encountered all these matas, all these various belief systems that existed at various parts of Bharatavarsha. And some of them were just taking in Acharya's viewpoint, but they still remained with their own viewpoint and said that fine, we can coexist. Some of them were aggressive to say that no, our mata is the highest. Your mata of Advaita Vedanta cannot hold good. And then there were intellectual debates and discussions. Some of them accepted the Vaidika Dharma and they coexisted. They did not give up their mata, but they merged their mata into Vaidika Dharma. So if somebody believed in Vishnu or Vaikhanasa, they said Vaikhanasa, we will still follow the Agamas of Vaikhanasa and everything, but that is a part of Vaidika Dharma. That is a part, Advaita Vedanta or that Vedantic aspect is also there, but we will follow this for Pravritti Marga and take up that for Nivritti Marga. So the coexistence came for some people. For some people, it was completely unacceptable. For some people, they completely changed into Advaita Vedanta itself. For some people, they had to be completely annihilated, which were harmful to the society, like the Kapalikas. They had to be dealt with in means other than intellectual debates in terms of power, where you had the power of the kings and the armies, also to deal with some of these people, because they came down to the discussion of strength rather than just discussion on debates. You find this that even there were various temples of Devi, like Kamakshi Amman temple in Kanchipuram, the Akhilandeshwari temple in Jambukeshwara. Many of these temples were converted into tantric sites, into Vamachara temples, where a lot of Narabali, the beheading of people, of animals, offering of blood, wine, meat, all of these things were followed in huge proportions. While that patha still exists today in some temples in the country, especially if you go to the northeast part, right, the east and the northeastern sections, if you go, even today in Bangala, if you go to the Kali Ghat temple in Calcutta, you will still find Bali being given. In many of the remote tribal places, you will still find that, but that is when it is contained to a particular level, it is still fine, because it is their following. We cannot go against it, or we cannot completely eliminate that, because that is their culture. But if it just remains contained, it doesn't delve, or it doesn't infringe on others' rights or others' freedom and living and peaceful living, it is fine. If it just exists for their own society, community, and it just goes on there with the alignment or acceptance of people, it can still go on there. But if it starts infringing on the other society and saying that by force I am taking people, I am giving their Narabali, I am asking them to convert, that is the concept which Acharya completely refuted. He did not accept forceful conversion into any mata. Even his debates were not forceful, they were intellectual debates. He spoke about the fact, he pointed out the flaws in the other matas, in their principles, in their tenets, in their fundamentals. And if they converted, they converted. If even at the end they said that we do not agree with your concept, Acharya just left them and said, fine, you then, that is your karma, you remain with that, and we go ahead. So, no, none of this has to be treated as conversions. They were not conversions. That is another narrative people speak about, saying that the Acharya removed the 72 matas and established the 6 matas. That is completely wrong. He did not remove them. He had encounters with all of them. He pointed out the flaws. People converted into this mata by their choice, not by force. And those that were harmful were dealt with in a different way, because they were anti-social elements that were harmful to the society itself. So they had to be dealt with in a different way. So that is the kind of religious landscape that the Acharya, and of course Bauddha Mata, Jaina Mata also he encountered. But what we need to understand is that many of these matas don't exist today, which is definitely maybe thanks to the Acharya in later times, where the people completely gave up because they didn't find any real benefit in following that mata. But many of these matas still do exist in different forms even till today. And many of them are not harmful. They are just a following. So that's perfectly fine. That's perfect coexistence that even exists till today. But that start infringing on others' rights, freedom, forceful conversions, mass conversions, this is something that Acharya opposed during his period of time. And we need an Acharya today, or we as followers of Sanatana Dharma also need to start voicing our opinions towards infringing on others' freedom, or others' peaceful living, or others' right to religion, or others' right to follow a particular belief system. It is not just with respect to the major religions. You find 72 matas here who are following multiple things. So even today, people do have the right to follow what they want to follow. But that right should be given to the people. It should not be taken away. It should not be snatched by force, by brute force. And that is what Acharya opposed. And that is what he is reminding us of, we also wanting, or we also should be doing that for the peaceful coexistence of Sanatana Dharma. So this is where I think I'll just pause and take up any questions, because I know that this is a topic. It's a controversial topic. It's an interesting topic, but I would still like to take up any viewpoints or thoughts that people might have, or any questions that you might have on this topic.
Thank you, Subramanianji, for a very graphic and very lively discussion, and a glimpse into Bhagavad Padacharya's life and some of his less discussed achievements, I would say, through his Vijay Yatras, through his temple revival, and great contributions to the puja and upasana, the sacred geography of India. So I think this needs to be highlighted more and more. Viewers, if you have any questions, please do put in the Q&A box. Subramanian, you had some PPT slides to show about your books. Please go ahead and
Yes,
show
yes,
it.
I'll do that. Yeah. So as all of you can see on the screen, so I'm really happy and excited to also have this opportunity to share with all of you that this is the book that I mentioned at the beginning of my lecture, which is Shankarayanam, The Journey of Shankara. This is a book that is releasing next week. It should be available on Amazon. All of you should be able to find this book if you search on Amazon. And very soon they should also be available in some of the bookstore chains closer to your home that you should be able to get a handle of. This book is actually very, very close to my heart, because Shankara has been something that I have been exposed to right from my birth. I do come from a family which is extremely devoted to the Acharya Parampara, both the Kanchi Parampara as well as the Sringeri Parampara. So I have members of my family who have been extremely close to the Kanchi Mathas, as well as people who have been extremely close to the Sringeri Matha, and many other acharyas who come in the Shankara Parampara. We have always seen each and every acharya of the Shankara Parampara as the acharya himself, as the Shankaracharya himself. And that's been something that has come down in our family. And that, of course, got further, encouraged and boosted over my life, where I got to have the darshan of many of these acharyas, including the Mahaswami of Kanchi when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Of course, multiple times the other acharyas of Kanchi Mata and the acharyas of Sringeri Mata. And also in later times, really trying to get a glimpse of the intellectual side of the Acharya's works during my MA in Vedanta from the Mumbai University, from great teachers like Dr. Gauri Mahulikar, Dr. Shakuntala Gavade. These are great teachers of Advaita Vedanta from whom I have learnt a lot and have understood more of the Acharya's works. So this book is actually one of my biggest dreams to have got fulfilled. The book is for people who want to understand about the Acharya. It is not a complete research book or a technical book which is only for scholars. This is built in a story format which speaks about the story of the Acharya, so that the journey of the Acharya. While speaking of the story, just like I explained today, while speaking of that story, many other aspects are also brought in. Like when I'm talking about the birth of the Acharya, the time that of the Acharya is spoken about, the kind of scenario that existed in Kerala, in Bharata is spoken about. When he travels to Narmada, what was existing at that point of time? How did he travel? So along with the life of the Acharya, we are seeing other things. Just like when you are going in a train or a bus, when your objective is to go to the destination, but on the way you see so many things all around you, and that gives you more information, that gives you more details. Similarly, as we are going through the life of the Acharya, the journey of the Acharya, we are traveling with the Acharya, we are seeing many things around us, that those times, those periods are also, they give us visibility, they give us darshana. So all that is also explained side by side as we go through this journey of the Acharya. So I hope this will be a very very interesting read for all of you. Along with the story of the Acharya, there are also interesting aspects about the tradition of the Acharya, about the places Acharya, the temples he visited, and some details around that, the works of the Acharya, the works composed on the Acharya, some FAQs, some interesting FAQs, especially with respect to doubts that typically come to the young generation, or typically doubts that come to the modern day. Some of the basic doubts, some of the critical doubts that come related to the Acharya have also been dealt with in this book. So I hope this will be a very interesting read for all of you. And the other, I'm really blessed and happy to also share that this book had shared the manuscript with some of the great Mahatmas and people who are extremely devoted to the Advaita or the Sanatana Dharma, and all of them have given their blessings in the form of testimonials, be it Swami Advayanandji of the Chinmaya Mission, or Swami Sakshat Kritanandji of the Arya Vidya, Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, the tradition of Hayananda Saraswati, or great scholars such as the legendary dancer and scholar Dr. Padma Subramanian Padduvaka, or my dear friend Dushyant Sridhar, who's been doing so much for the propagation of Sanatana Dharma. I think all of them have given their best wishes and blessings through their testimonials. So I hope this will be a very interesting read and all of you would enjoy it. Would also request all of you to give your feedback once you read through the book. And yeah, this is what I wanted to share, Nitinji.
Thank you very much, Subramanian. I'm also looking forward to read the book as soon as it is published. We have 2-3 questions. I'll just read them out and you can answer them. Do you see a need for Acharya's incarnations again, or blessings again now to guide our community when there are at a time when there is a lot of Western influence in our daily lives.
Yeah, very interesting and very pertinent question. I'll just give you my perspective on this. Uh, yes, we do need, uh, but I would say we need the spirit of the Acharya. Okay, so I think if you are just waiting for an avatarana to happen or an incarnation to happen, that may not be the right aspect for the world that we are living in today. I think what we need to do is we need to have Acharya incarnate in each one of us. I think all of us have the Acharya within us. All the followers of Sanatana Dharma have the deep bhakti and shraddha towards this Dharma within us. So we need to allow Acharya to come into us and germinate within us. And we need to stand up. Because one person doing, see, Acharya, that is the critical point I would like to say. Many of these Mahatmas, they are avatara purushas, they are karana purushas. So when they come and do things, many things might happen suprahuman, right? It's not even possible for a human to do many of these things, is how it would feel. So waiting for that one avatarana or one superhuman to come in is fine. When they come, they will come, right? But the point is that we need to keep doing our own little bit for the revival and for the sustenance of Sanatana Dharma in our own way. Whatever way we can, we should keep doing. All these drops will definitely act to create that ocean, and that is what I would say. I definitely agree with the point, the concern, but I think we should all act as acharyas, emissaries, and go ahead in doing this job.
Thank you again. I think we have a few more questions.
Yeah.
The next question is whether there is any data on what was the estimated population of Bharata during Acharya's times. And for a second part of the question is any idea about the size of the followings or any estimated data on the number of people who used to follow this different 72 matas that you mentioned.
Yeah, again, a very, very interesting question. Unfortunately, we don't get these data in most of our scriptures, right, in terms of population and stuff. But yes, you can make some relative judgments, not about the number, but about the relative size. Because even as you look at some of uh, the journeys, the travelogues of the Acharya from the Shankara Vijayas, you do have huge amount of environmental cover or forest cover in many of the lands, right? Then you have the concept of the Janapadas. And this you also find not just from Acharya's times, you also find from the Arthashastra and etc. All these texts, you will find these aspects that you had certain cities which were extremely highly populated cities. And how do you know about the population or how do you know about the relative population in these cities is from the kinds of measurements of houses, from the kinds of measurements of roads, which is all mentioned in Arthashastra if you look at it, and if you also look at some of the Vastu Shastra texts like the Mayamata, Manushyalaya Chandrika, all these texts, when you look at, they give dimensions. How should the road be? How should the buildings be? How should the buildings for the royals or the people on the court be? How should the villages be? So some of these will give us a rough sense of the kind, assuming that the kind of space was still this Akhanda Bharata. If you take the Akhanda Bharata as the space, it was more or less the same. In that space, how did they distribute that space to create these cities versus what are we doing today? So you can do a relative comparison and find out, maybe through that relative comparison you can make some estimations of what it could have looked like or what kind of population could have existed at that point of time. But that is, I think, an activity to be done. We don't have explicit things mentioned. Also, in terms of estimated followership of the matas, again, you don't find that data, but maybe in the kind of sequencing in some of the Shankara Vijayas, maybe there is a possibility to say that some of the uh, first matas that are taken may have been the matas that have been hugely followed, or a higher following was there. And then following the later matas that were there, probably those were the lesser followed matas. That is only the guess you can make between these matas, but you will not find any exact numbers to these.
Okay, thank you, thank you. One final question, very quickly. What is the future of Sanatana Dharma in the present context when many objectives, prevailing in the society, how current society is? What are the future as you see it? How you read the current situation?
Yeah. again an interesting question. And as I was having this discussion with one of my dear friends, the friend pointed out to me to say that, aren't you saying this as Sanatana Dharma? Then doesn't it mean that this is going to remain Sanatana, right? So I think that very term itself says that yes, this Dharma is not going to go down. The Dharma is not going to get wiped off. So that we can be rest assured. But we cannot remain complacent. That is the point. The Dharma will remain. There will be some means by which Ishvara himself will figure out ways to bring back Dharma. But we as Sanatanis or the followers of Sanatana Dharma will need to keep doing our bit to continuously look for the sustenance of this Dharma. So I definitely see the future of Sanatana Dharma as bright, as always. Right? We do have a lot of people in the current generation who are very interested in knowing about Sanatana Dharma, who are interested in knowing the true facts, they're getting into the details, which itself is hugely encouraging and optimistic. So I think definitely the future is bright and great. All the objectives of society definitely can be met because Sanatana Dharma has never been at loggerheads with Purushartha. Purushartha has been an integral part of Sanatana Dharma. So all human goals and human objectives have been a part of Sanatana Dharma. So I don't think they are going to be contradictory to any objectives of the society. But we need we need to act and we need to do our bit to keep it alive.
Definitely. I think I would add something to what you just
Sure.
said. Uh, Dharma is Sanatana, and in its pristine form, it will exist in one way or the other. But what is not Sanatana is the material manifestation of it, namely the Hindu civilization. So, for to make that as a Sanatana, we have to put our work. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
otherwise we cannot take it for a guarantee that the civilization will survive. Dharma will survive because when the dharma goes down, eventually there will be pralaya and there will be new cycle. So
Correct.
we should not worry about dharma, as Bhagwan himself says that in Gita he will take birth again and again. But we have to think about dharma in our level, because for the civilization to survive, we have to orient in dharma. Otherwise, the civilization will go down.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree, Nitinji.
So we often, they the two terms are same, but they also have different connotation. So this clarity is needed. Okay, it was a very interesting, very wonderful conversation, Subramanian ji, and all the best for your work, and congratulations again. It's a wonderful work, and I'm personally looking forward to it.
Thanks a
And
lot, Nitinji. Just one, I think there was one other question that's come
oh,
about Vishishtadvaita.
okay, yeah,
Maybe I'll just mention a couple of points on that. Uh, so definitely Vishishtadvaita viewpoint existed. So I think one thing that I always keep mentioning is it is actually um a bit of a misunderstanding that people assume that Advaita Vedanta came from Shankaracharya, Vishishtadvaita came from Ramanujacharya, Dvaita came from Advacharya. These have been prominent acharyas who have brought up that philosophy or that school to the highest level, and they have acted as the prominent acharyas. That does not mean that these matas did not exist before. In Acharya's Bhashyas itself, you find references to various previous acharyas, Purvacharyas. And in those Purvacharyas, there have been people who have been holding, especially in Ramanuja Bhashya, when you look at it, Ramanujacharya mentions of many Purvacharyas who existed even before Shankaracharya, who have been the proponents of Vishishtadvaita, or that kind of the tenets or fundamental principles have existed. So what we need to understand is that all these matas or all these viewpoints have existed at some point of time much before these acharyas. So they have all been interpreted also by many of the acharyas, but unfortunately none of their literature is available today, or none of their works are available today, and we come to know of many of these works through the works of Shankaracharya or Ramanujacharya. Is how we come to know through their bhashyas, is how we are coming to know of it. But people should not confuse it to say that these did not exist before. They definitely existed before, and that is why these acharyas brought forth their viewpoint more strongly, because they believed in one particular interpretation of Vedanta. That is why they brought out that more strongly.
indeed, indeed. I think as I see it, and as many of the acharyas have seen it, they see it's all a big puzzle. All these different viewpoints leading up to the summit
Correct.
in different way, and different acharyas have conceived of way how in different ways how the different matas exist. For we Advaitins, the Advaita is at the zenith and the others are leading to it, but
Yeah.
different people, different acharyas have conceived of it in different way. But
Yes.
the point is that the idea is to see them as a whole, the part of the
Correct.
whole, rather than disarrayed, disjunct viewpoints. So that is the key to understanding dharma, is what I feel.
Absolutely.
So on this note, again, Subramanian ji, thank you very much. It was a wonderful conversation, and we look forward to doing more sessions with you in the future. Thank you very much. Viewers, with this, we conclude the session. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om.